Hi everyone, welcome. So glad to have you with us broadcasting from NEDAS New York City Summit 2019. And I'm so glad to have George Cornachini here with me from Global InterXchange. GIX is, I think, a really interesting story that maybe a lot of the NEDAS people are just beginning to get to know right now. Tell us where GIX is at this point and what's really moving forward with the organization.
Sure. And thank you, Steve, for having myself here. So GIX is a fiber company that is building between New York and New Jersey through the Path Tunnel. Okay, so that's a unique build, which has not been done before. This is a most southern route, which will give the lowest latency, and certainly because it's a new route, will add additional diversity to what's between New York and New Jersey. But it will also add, and if you're familiar in the fiber world, new fiber. New fiber is really important because the characteristics of new fiber are certainly better than old fiber. And the current fiber that's there's not a lot of it. So this fiber brings to the carriers the ability to absorb or take more fiber from an IRU perspective, from a lease perspective, and it allows them and or their financials to take advantage of this. The other advantage of this unique build is that after Sandy, they did some work on the Path Tunnel itself, and they've put actually vault doors on it, so that in the event that there is any sort of flooding that occurs, those doors get shut. Okay. And so now the fiber stays dry. Availability certainly increases. Our termination point is well above sea level, so we would not expect any interruption. Certainly we will have SLAs to support that. And it's a really, really exciting time for us because the timing of this is absolutely straight on. Yeah. And one of the things here at NEDAS is, you know, the discussion about wireless, and somebody said this morning that over 65% of all traffic now is being used on a wireless perspective, right? So that's great, eyeballs. We love eyeballs. We love, you know, all those companies that support the infrastructure, whether it be the Zen5s of the world or the Extranets of the world or the Crown Castles of the world. You know, we love them because they're going to build the user. They're going to build to the eyeballs. Well, from our perspective, all of that needs capacity. Right? So that capacity will come from either a cloud or content providers, which, you know, are certainly the typical ones that we know in this world. And for us, we know that there is a certain amount of content within, you know, the area of New York, but we also know that the majority of the content is actually going to be from other locations outside of New York, okay? So this is the pathway, literally, to get to that. The important point here is we look at this, or you may assume that this is strictly for a New York, New Jersey connection, right? But the reality is, and I look at it from a different perspective, I looked at it as a global perspective, right? Because New York is a central hub at the end of the day, right? I mean, it's got financials, it has obviously 8+ million people that are, I believe, residents, and then there's probably another couple million that come in on a daily basis. Okay, so there's a huge amount of traffic that needs to go here, and that traffic is going globally, right? So you've got many carriers, international carriers, that require either transatlantic or South America connectivity, right, from New York, right? So this gives them the opportunity and the path to plan their networks on a new infrastructure. The other point here is that So not only is it, low latency, you have diversity, but by having additional paths, routes, you actually lower your cost of ownership, right? And you ask yourself the question, well, how does that happen, right? Well, it happens because if you have more capacity and you have less routes, then that means you have to double or triple or in some cases quadruple the amount of circuits that you have on this single path, because in the event that path goes down, you need to be able to support it on an alternate path, a secondary path, right? Well, if you have 3 paths or 4 paths, you can distribute that, because the general rule of thumb is that a network can absorb at least one failure. Now, whether that be a 100 gig circuit or something even more than that. But generally speaking, that's how you do it. So if you can diverse in the amount of circuits you have across multiple paths, you actually have to lease, buy, or take dark fiber IRU, less of it, right? So it actually becomes a better scale for cost of ownership, right? Mm-hmm. And so for us, I find this very exciting, because it just confirms the fact that what we're doing, there's a need for it. And what's even more important, in my personal view, is that we're able to provide a solution. So from a technical aspect, from my roots, solving, providing solutions really is what motivates me. And GIX can absolutely, unequivocally provide that level of service, right? Because it's all about end-to-end service, right? At the end of the day. So we're in a very good position to extend networks, again, not just between New York and New Jersey, but globally. And I look at it, from a global metric.
The timing is kind of remarkable. How long? I mean, not the entire path of GIX, but
Sure.
but you've been building GIX up until this point, and it seems to have emerged and shown up at a real. I'm not going to call it a crisis time. It's not a crisis time. It's an opportunity time.
Yes.
But the timing has been quite remarkable. Were you that visionary to be able to make it, or did things just occasionally the X factors line up?
Well, my colleagues within GIX have been working with this for several years, mm-hmm. and certainly the long pole in the tent is getting approval and planning and support through the port, mm-hmm. through the Port Authority, and that took time from both sides. We are at the point now where we have a contract and the plans have been submitted, and so we're absolutely unequivocally moving forward. And to your point, it can't be of better timing, no. Right? So it would have been good to have it done a year ago, but I don't necessarily think you would have had the amount of excitement and energy and need, to be honest with you, that you need today. That's sure. A requirement today. One thing that's clear and it's been clear in from the day I started in many years ago. Infrastructure is so important, right? If you don't have infrastructure, you can't build a house on anything, right? So infrastructure, and that's what we're doing here, right? I mean, we're sending light through fiber, right? And certainly that in itself, from a technology perspective, is pretty neat stuff, right? But if you splice it down, it's absolutely a requirement to go and continue to grow the capacity that's been required. I mean, let's face it, the curve of capacity has been going high to the right for many, many years. and could people have predicted that it would continue to grow? And some people maybe say yes, and some people maybe have questioned, is it going to stop? But there's no sign that I can see in the future that, we're going to hit any sort of flattening out, which means to me that there's always going to be a requirement for content. There's always going to be a requirement for eyeballs. And, the fact of the matter is that just from basic theory, if you make it easy for people to use, it will absolutely be used more. I mean, there's a proven fact, right? So, the Zen5s of the world and those folks, those guys are making it, accessible. The buildings are putting in their DAS systems and everything else to make it accessible. My perspective, we're going to take care of the backhaul, at least provide them options, and continue to provide them with options in the future. This is one project of where we see some additional future projects to come. This is not the end all of be all. There's tremendous amount of opportunities that are out there. So we're excited. We have a solution, and the nice part about it is, it's not a problem looking for a solution. We have a solution for the problem.
Sure. All right, last thing I want to ask you about, and then we'll wrap things up here, is let's talk about the meeting. We'll talk about today. Like you said, you've been involved with NEDAS for some time. You know the players and the people. What is it about a gathering like this that you look forward to, that you feel that you can get out of it, and in this particular case, how you feel it can benefit GIX and vice versa? Absolutely.
So, I've attended meetings, all over the world, conferences, and continue to do so. What's nice about NEDAS and what's nice about specifically in New York, it's our home turf, right? Yeah. So, home field advantage is always is always a good view. And what it does is it does several things for me. It allows me to confirm what I'm thinking, because there's other people in the industry, other colleagues that have great ideas, and either it stimulates me to say, hey, I should think about that, or it confirms what I have been thinking. So that's important for me. And then it's also important to get a chemistry view, if you will, of where we can bring additional value, right? So if somebody's really excited about something, I feed on that, right? So I want to understand that. I want to understand, that in more detail, and especially if somebody, has some sort of a solution they're trying to find, then I'd like to be part of those discussions, right? For me, that's important, and it is important for GIX to be able to look at the big picture, right? We're not building DAS systems in buildings, but it's certainly important for us to understand that, and it's certainly important for us to understand, the Wi-Fi, that's going to be out in the street, and what that's going to mean for capacity and traffic, and even from a financial perspective, right? What are their hot buttons? Do they still have the low latency requirements? And low latency is great. Everybody talks about it, but you could make the argument that they're with the exception of the financial institution, there is a certain premium that you will pay for and only pay for, right? And then there's a small group of financials that will pay more, but again, it's a smaller group, right? So from a network provider, we need to make sure that we're addressing the financial institutions as well as the rest of the community, right? So it's at the end of the day, it's not only technology, but what drives technology is certainly a need, but it's cost. I mean, you can wrap it up any way you want it, but at the end of the day, you have to have a cost-effective solution, right?
Absolutely.
And so many of the vendors and my colleagues that we partner with, you sit down and you figure out if there's a better approach or a new approach that we should be looking at, right? So this meeting alone has generated several other meetings for me to follow up with, because again, people are excited, they understand this. We want to start planning, with the different New York fiber providers, give them the opportunity to get on board and take advantage of this, right? So to us, we don't look at this, and never have looked, as a competitor model or being competitive. We look at this as a partnership, right?
Absolutely.
And that's what I think Alyssa and NEDAS, and I know Alyssa for years, it is all about partnership, right? It really is. And from her heart, she is always driving, that message, right? Everybody can do business together, everybody can benefit, everybody can collaborate, and everybody can win, right, at the end of the day. So that's what makes this really unique.
That's perfect. That's perfect. George, it's been such a pleasure to
Steve,
talk to you.
thank you.
I know it's been already a busy day, so I'm so grateful to have you in here in the studio with us. So,
all right.
And thanks to all of you for watching.
Thank you.